Hey friends, it's Anna and welcome to another cozy reading wrap-up in my reading journal. We are going to be creating some fun stat pages and book review spreads for all the books I read in January. I'm flipping through my initial setup spreads right now, which will also go back and fill out with our first books of the year. I read some really interesting books to start off 2025, so this is going to be a really fun video. Grab some tea or coffee, get cozy, and let's start journaling. First things first, I always gather my supplies. I have some stickers here that actually came as freebies with a different journal, and then this beautiful cinnamon and dusty blue washi tape from the washi tape shop. Some other washi tapes from a few different sets, again sticking with similar colors. And then I have some collage materials, cream paper scraps from an old journal, and my old Harry Potter book for book pages. These are the primary brush pen colors I'll be using, and then I'm relying on these letter stencils for some of my fonts. I love gathering all my materials like this before starting a setup so I can make sure all my colors match and I have a good variety of textures and patterns that go with the aesthetic I'm trying to create. As you can see, I'm doing a very muted blue and beige theme that I think is perfect for winter months. These colors were actually perfect to tie in with the book covers. It's always a bonus if I can get my reading journal themes to match the covers of the book I read. And as always, all these supplies will be linked below in the description box. I'm starting off this monthly setup as I normally do with 2 cover pages. One is just for the title and some fun collaging, and the right page will be for some monthly reading stats, and that's where I'll paste in all the book covers for the books I read in January. For this month, I thought I'd try out a different collage style where it's a little more orderly, I guess you could put it. I don't know, I was inspired by some pictures I saw on Pinterest where everything was arranged in set columns and boxes, and I thought it was a cute style, so that's the look we're going for here. A little bit different from the normal, more chaotic layering I do. You'll see me using this mini cutting mat for the washi tape. I love this tool. It makes cutting tapes with my X-Acto knife so much more convenient. So I'm just combining a bunch of my different materials here on the page. I wrote out my title with the help of that letter stencil on the cream journal paper. We have a rectangle of a book page, which I thought would look cute with a flower sticker on top, and these color dot stickers are just perfect too, which you'll see me rearrange these. I am always rearranging on the page. I just stick things down to start with and then see how they look. Sometimes I need to change it around. Especially with this sectional style, I guess is another way you could describe it. I feel like it was easier to just put one element down at a time and go from there instead of trying to visualize the whole page together before sticking anything on. If you do a lot of collaging or junk journaling, I would love to hear about your process. Do you visualize everything out first? Do you just stick things down one at a time and build with little initial plan? How long does it take you? I find collaging always takes me much longer than I expect because I never account for all the time I'm just sitting there staring at the page, trying to imagine designs and how things would look. I'm loving the style and format of this cover page. You guys will see I really want to experiment this year in my reading journal with different ideas and formats. I've been pretty consistent with what my spreads look like the past 2 years, but I started to have some ideas on how I can change things up, so I'm excited to try out some new ideas for stats and on the book spreads. I'm not sure how I'm loving the colors. The stickers and washi tape didn't really blend as well as I thought, but now I'm cutting out the book covers and you can kind of see that there's definitely a theme of blue and orange, so I immediately felt like that dusty blue and cinnamon tape would be perfect. I've used this tape several times in my journal because I think it's really pretty, and I am an affiliate with the WASHI tape shop, so you can always use my code ANNABRUNS10 for 10% off your entire purchase over there if you want to check out this tape or any of their other products. I had quite an interesting reading month in January. 2 DNFs or did not finish, which is kind of rare for me. I hate DNFing books, but I finished 4 books of an kind of odd array. I went from historical fiction to true crime, which I don't think I've ever read before actually, but it ended up being really good. And then contemporary romance, which is another genre I almost never read. And then I ended with another historical fiction. Like I said, this right page is for a little summary of my reading month. I have the book covers up top. I'm writing a title of 4 books, which I'm going to decorate with a wreath from the washi tape, and most of the remaining space will be for some reading stats. I'm trying out a new format to track these stats, which was inspired from a Joshi Corin video, the monthly summary page idea she shared. I'm not using the full page format she used, but I loved the pie charts for each reading stat, so I'm going to build 4 pie charts and their keys for the 4 different stats on this left side. The first stat I have is genre. Like I said, I read 2 historical fiction, 1 nonfiction, which was the true crime, and 1 romance. I'm writing those out under the title, and then I'm going to add the color key, which I'll use to color in the pie charts. And I thought it'd be easier to just go ahead and add the color keys for all the stats and draw out all the pie charts together. I'll fill each one in according to the color key, and I think these look so cute. It's such a fun way to see different characteristics of my reading habits. The next stat is format, so if I read these books physically or on Kindle or listened to it as an audiobook. A lot of these were combinations, so I just went with the media that I felt like was the majority. Then we have rating. Most of these were 4 stars. I had 1 4.5 star and 1 3 star. Lastly, I have how long it took me to read the books. I'm always curious about my reading pace, especially since it varies drastically. One of these books literally took me 4 months to finish. You know which one if you've been following along, but that was actually my 4.5 star book. And then the rest I read in 1 to 2 weeks. I also have a habit of reading books at the same time, which also varies how long it takes me to finish each one. I probably read like over 10 books in the span that I was reading The Covenant of Water. But I think it's fun to try to average out my reading pace at the end of the year. I keep track of all of these stats monthly and some other stats on different spreads. And at the end of the year, I do a big summary page with averages and totals, including all the books combined. I love looking at that at the end of each year, so I'll link my reading journal flip through from 2024 and 2023 if you want to see those pages. Before we get into the book review spreads, you might have noticed I'm wearing a new ring, this gorgeous pearl, and that is thanks to the sponsor of today's video, Miss Blue. This is literally the perfect time to talk about jewelry with Valentine's Day right around the corner. Miss Blue is a sustainable jewelry brand offering 100% handmade products with personalized customization options at affordable prices on top of it all. I am so in love with this freshwater cultured pearl twist ring. I got it with a yellow gold band, but they offer most pieces with a variety of options. I also got this freshwater pearl moissanite pendant necklace as a gift for my mom. If you're doing any Valentine's Day shopping for yourself or loved ones, I love that Miss Blue offers so many timeless and simply elegant designs. And what really sets them apart is a lot of their jewelry comes in options with high quality alternatives to diamonds, like the moissanite in this necklace. This makes the pricing so much more affordable without sacrificing beauty and gives you luxurious looking and feeling jewelry that's still sturdy for everyday wear. The jewels accenting my pearl ring are also moissanite, which gives the added benefit of being an eco-friendly option. This jewel is lab-grown and ethically sourced, so no mining. And I love that Miss Blue is committed to creating pieces using sustainably sourced materials and donating to environmental causes for those of us who are looking to be socially responsible consumers. You can shop their extensive collection of engagement rings in moissanite if you're looking for a more affordable option that still offers beautiful sparkle and clarity. I'll link both the pieces I got in the description box below, and you can use my code AB15 for 15% off your purchase at Miss Blue. It's always a great time to say I love you to family or yourself with a beautiful piece of jewelry. Getting back into the journal, these first 2 pages will be for Winter Garden by Kristen Hanna and Beach Read by Emily Henry. We're going to start off with Winter Garden on this left side. I'm trying a little bit of a new format for my book reviews. Review is a strong word. This is more a space where I can write any thoughts I had about my experience with the book, even just fun memories of specific reading sessions or how it related to me personally. I think that's more fun to write about than an official review. So this is more personal journaling about my reading experience. Winter Garden is my 4th book by Kristen Hanna. I think she's made me cry in every single one so far. The Nightingale by her has been my favorite. I cannot recommend that book enough. So I was excited to read this one as another World War II historical fiction by her. And it is that kind of, but the bulk of the story is focused on the present day and 2 adult sisters we're following, Meredith and Nina. All their lives, these girls struggled growing up with their mother, Anya, who was cold and distant, and the only moments they ever connected was over an old Russian fairy tale. So when Meredith and Nina's beloved father is on his deathbed, his last request is that Anya tell the sisters the fairy tale one last time all the way to the end. And through this, we learn about Anya's past in war-torn Leningrad, and not only unpacked how this affected her, but her whole family decades moving forward. As you can see, I'm starting off the spread with this little section of info and stats on the book, a lot of which is repeated from the cover page, but I thought this would be a fun way to be able to add some more details, like the exact dates I read the book and any extra notes. Like I added, this was my first ever book I read on Kindle. I got my first Kindle for Christmas. I also thought it'd be fun to include a why I picked this book up section, because it's interesting to remember why I wanted to read certain books or decided to read them when I did. Below the stats and the picture, I wanted to include a quote, so I'm going to pull out my Kindle. It's so convenient to have a place with all my ebook highlights. I know I'm so late to the game in discovering the convenience of ebook reading. I ended up giving this book 4 stars. Kristen Hanna's writing is always phenomenal. The way she places you in the setting and makes you empathize with her characters, I think those are some of her biggest talents. This was a book I couldn't put down, especially towards the end. But even really in the beginning, when the plot was moving slower, you're just so immersed that even with the slower pace, you're invested. I loved the complexity of Anya's character. I was fascinated by her from the beginning and just as desperate as her daughters to learn her story. The things I didn't love was the frustration of the present day storyline because the decisions the two sisters were making. I didn't really love either of them as main characters, but I feel like maybe that was the point. Their relationship with their mother really affected who they were and their own relationships, even in adulthood. And so I feel like this book was a really good case study on how our upbringing, subtly or not so subtly, affects the rest of our lives. I would definitely recommend this book, but I would go into it knowing that it focuses on the two daughters and the family's relationship more than the World War II story, which can be a little disappointing if you're just wanting a World War II historical fiction. Okay, moving over to the right page, which is my spread for beach read. This is my second Emily Henry book and only like the fourth contemporary romance book I've read in like the past decade. This is not typically a genre I'm drawn to, but I read Book Lovers by her last year and enjoyed it more than I thought I would, so I decided to pick up another one. Maybe something to lift the mood after getting my heart stomped on by Winter Garden. So this book is about January and Gus, who are both authors in a writing rut. January writes romances with happily ever afters, and Gus writes darker, more tragic fiction. In order to help each other out of their ruts, they decide to swap genres and help each other write outside their comfort zones. I did enjoy that plot line, seeing into an author's life and day-to-day and writing process, them talking about their different literary inspirations and why they write the way they do. Obviously, as a person who loves reading, I think that's really interesting. I didn't love the romance in this one as much as in Book Lovers. I was invested for the first half of the book and then I kind of just lost interest. But it was still an easy, fast-paced read that overall I enjoyed. I don't know if I will ever love this style of writing. I feel like most contemporary romance books I've tried have this same voice that's very modern, very informal, I guess. I don't know exactly how to describe it. I think I just prefer my books to feel a little more elevated than everyday speaking language. I think that helps take me out of my present day world better, and ultimately that's one of the reasons why I read the escapism aspect. So I gave this one 3 stars. I didn't love it, but it kept me entertained for a good few hours. This next book, I'm actually going to use 2 full pages to make a spread for, which seems only fitting because I was reading it for 4 months, but also I had so many quotes I wanted to record and I knew I was going to need a lot of space for that. This is The Covenant of Water by Abraham Verghese. This is a massive work of historical fiction that follows 3 generations of an Indian family in Kerala, India, who struggle with a strange affliction where there's at least 1 death by drowning in every generation. I would also consider this literary fiction because of the strong window into each of the characters and commentary on faith, family relationships, political changes in India during this time, medical advancement during this time, and women's struggles and rights. This book covered so much with so much grace and curiosity and humor. We start off with our main character, who is later known as Big Amachi, when she's 12 years old on her way to an arranged marriage. We get to witness her whole incredible life and also follow her children's and grandchildren's stories. This book was thoughtful, it was moving, it made me cry, it made me laugh out loud so many times. I might give an inner chuckle at books now and then, but this book forced outright laughter. The author's humor was so well executed, especially mixed in with so many heavy topics. I really did feel like I lived 3 generations of lives with all the emotions, good and bad, and everything in between. Like I said, I had so many quotes I wanted to record, so I'm splitting them up into categories and I'm going to add them around the edges of the page. I listened to this book mostly, but also ended up buying the physical book when I had to turn the audiobook back into the library before finishing it. So I have the quotes here all on these sticky notes. This is a book I would highly recommend on audio specifically. It's narrated by the author and he delivered the story beautifully. I guess who better to bring out the tone and inflections of the writing better than the person who wrote it? I just felt like his voice brought the characters and story to life so strongly. I also think this is a good audiobook because it's not a page turner, obviously, as it took me so long to read. The plot could be slow, and so it wasn't something I necessarily always wanted to pick up, even if I always enjoyed it when I did. And at least to me, those types of books are good for audio because it's easier to keep my attention, even if it's a slow and meditative vibe. Also, I think this story, especially the Indian culture and setting, came through so much more vibrantly from the narrator than what I could have imagined on my own. I gave this one 4.5 stars. It was such an impressive piece of literature that was both thought-provoking and moving. And I'll just read you guys a few of the quotes that I'm recording. There were so many good ones, even beyond the ones I selected for my spread. A quote about Baby Moll, a character I love, goes, "Seeing the miraculous in the ordinary is a more precious gift than prophecy." This is also the book where I got my quote for the cover page of my reading journal. "Fiction is the great lie that tells the truth about how the world works." And I love this other quote regarding books that I'll just read part of. "When I come to the end of a book and look up, just 4 days have passed. But in that time, I have lived through 3 generations and learned more about the world and myself. Characters die on the page so that we might live better lives." I loved witnessing how faith played such a huge role in some of these characters' journey, and there were a lot of great words about that, but unfortunately, I only gave myself the room to write this one quote. "Life comes from God, and life is precious precisely because it is brief. God's gift is time, and however much or however little one has of it comes from Him." So if you like historical fiction or literary fiction or heavily character-driven books, I would definitely recommend this one. Big Amachi especially was one of my favorite characters I've read about in a while. Lastly, but not least for this wrap-up, we have Killers of the Flower Moon, The Osage Murders and Birth of the FBI by David Grann. Like I said earlier, this is a true crime book and it's a work of narrative nonfiction. So it's a true story and it wasn't novelized, but all the facts were written in a very descriptive way so that it almost read like a novel. It was definitely just as engrossing as any thriller I've read. And this was actually my husband's book club pick, so I'm going to flip back to my book club spread at the beginning of the journal and paste in another copy of the book cover. And since I'm already over here, I thought I'd go ahead and fill out some of the other spreads. In the book bingo, I'm filling out a book I haven't heard anyone talk about for The Covenant of Water because I chose that one solely off of seeing the cover at Barnes & Noble. I get to check off one nonfiction from my annual reading goals, and then I'll fill in the first 4 squares on my 2025 book count. One of the things I love about being in a book club is I would never have picked this book up if it weren't for someone else choosing for us to read it, but I ended up really liking it, which I feel a little uncomfortable saying, and this is why I've never been interested in true crime, because I feel a little weird about getting entertainment from someone else's true horrific experiences. But I like that this book really focused on illuminating so much history from that time, the discrimination, the systems of law and justice, how all these things played a role in this story. So anyways, the events of this book took place in the early 20th century, and it's about the Osage Native American tribe that was forcibly relocated to Oklahoma and then later discovered they sat on a fortune of oil. So almost overnight, the people of this tribe became some of the wealthiest Americans. And then one by one, they began dying. We especially follow the family of an Osage woman, Molly, who was a prime target, and multiple of her family members were killed at different times in different ways. Not only that, but many who investigated the case were themselves taken out. So the newly created FBI took up the case and relied on a former Texas Ranger named Tom White to unravel the mystery. This was obviously deeply disturbing subject matter, but I thought the author did a great job writing the book, explaining the history, the climate that surrounded these crimes, walking us through the case with suspense. I actually read almost this whole book in one sitting because I couldn't put it down, and I really appreciated learning more about the history behind the formation of American law enforcement and just this era, shedding light on the laws and systems that discriminated against Native people and how that lends itself to atrocities like this happening. I'd definitely recommend this one if you like true crime or history, and I really want to see the movie now. Let me know if you've seen the movie and if it's good. Also, please feel free to share your thoughts on any of these books in the comments. I'd love to continue discussing them with you guys, or hear if any of them are on your TBR, or what books you might recommend for me based on talking about these. So we are going to quickly finish up this journal setup with a next up page, aka February TBR, or to be read. To be completely honest, next up was a shorter title, and that's why I wrote that instead. The 3 books I know I want to read next month are War and Peace, which I have already started, finally. If you've been watching my reading journal videos, you know it's been an annual goal of mine to read this book for like the past 3 years. Then I have Red Rising, a sci-fi book I've been seeing all over social media recently, and from what I've heard, I feel like this series will be right up my alley, even though I'm more of a fantasy reader than sci-fi, but I'm pretty excited to try these books out. Then we have The Hidden Prince, which is biblical fiction. This story follows an Israelite captive in Babylon and takes place during the time of Daniel in the Old Testament. I'm going to leave some space below these in case any other books come up that I really want to add to my list. And next up is Ambiguous, so I could always keep using this as a March TBR too if I don't want to set up a new page next month. I thought it'd be fun to write a little blurb on expectations or why I'm excited about these books next to them, and that will finish up this spread and complete our setup. We'll do a final flip through of all the pages and see them together. Thank you again to Miss Blue for sponsoring this video. Don't forget to check out their beautiful jewelry. I had so much fun creating these spreads and talking about books with you guys. I'm excited to continue testing out some new reading, stat, and book review formats as the year goes on. I have so many ideas to keep making these spreads a little more creative. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day and happy reading.